we've got the sweet spot. There will be criticism from some who say it's too high. There's some who will say that it's too low.
On climate, Labor is making a virtue of what it considers a Goldilocks solution.
It's the right target to protect our environment, to protect and advance our economy and jobs, and to ensure that we act in our national interest and in the interest of this and future generations.
Ever mindful of the political contest against the coalition,
it can't be believed because the government assumes that the 2030 target is in fact met, when clearly it will not be.
And a climate movement demanding more.
It will not keep us safe from the climate damage that was forecast in the risk report released just this Monday.
Having delayed announcing a target that was originally slated for release in February, well ahead of the May election, the government has at last come clean, with an internationally binding promise to cut emissions between 62% and 70% a decade from now. A range rather than a point target that Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen says reflects difficulties in forecasting as well as moving state and territory policies.
We're not going to pretend that some sort of figure over 70, with no evidence, with no modelling, with no advice that's achievable, is a sensible ambition for this country.
While a chorus of voices say Labor's target should have been higher, even the lower end of the new range won't be easy, according to the Climate Change Authority, which recommended the target that Cabinet has chosen.
This will require a doubling of our decarbonisation rate and a halving of total emissions between now and 2035.
The 2035 target is Australia's third since the Paris Agreement set the world on a mission to contain dangerous levels of global warming. So far, emissions have fallen around 28% since 2005, Australia's chosen base year. 3 years ago, the Albanese government set a 2030 target of 43%. Today's target, if achieved and progress continues at the same pace, could deliver the 2050 net zero goal years sooner.
There is a technically feasible pathway to achieve the top end of the range, and I hope we overachieve on that. But in order to get there, we're going to need a whole of government, indeed Team Australia approach to doing that.
Most of the heavy lifting, according to the Climate Change Authority's advice, will be in the energy sector. Renewables would need to make up more than 90% of the grid by 2035, quadrupling wind and tripling solar. Half of all cars sold between now and 2035 will need to be EVs. Logging of old-growth forests ends.
If we all lean into this challenge, we can not only decarbonise our emissions, but we can do so in a way that realises the huge economic growth opportunity that's available to us.
The government has received Treasury modelling that suggests a 65% target would grow the economy by trillions of dollars, and that an alternative, disorderly transition without a 2035 target, a proxy for the coalition's current stance, would shrink the economy and make energy prices more expensive.
The only scenario which would be worse than a disorderly transition would be to abandon net zero completely.
The coalition has put its own support for net zero under review. It has no settled position. But it also highlights the government's central anxiety about its new targets. While the long-term outlook is positive for the economy and living standards, there is a transition cost that households and business will bear. One thing the Prime Minister won't be doing is repeating his past claims.
It will see electricity prices fall from the current level by $275 for households by 2025.
By what exact figure will they drop?
You yourself laughed when you asked that question, so it should be treated in the spirit in which you've done.
Much has changed since Labor set its last big climate target ahead of the 2022 election. So how does the government's new target shape up globally?
It certainly takes us away from being at the back of the pack and at least putting us in the middle to slightly to the front of the pack in terms of emission reductions across different nations.
ANU Emeritus Professor Mark Howden is a Vice Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. He says global efforts vary.
It's very much a mixed story, is that some countries are backsliding, others are treading water and others are forging forward.
To reach the target, the government today promised $5 billion for a new net zero fund to help heavy industrial emitters, and more money for energy subsidies, clean fuels and EV charging.
The vast majority of Australians want more action on climate change. They want that from government, and if allowed and enabled to do it, they'll probably do it themselves. That's why we've seen so many people putting solar panels on their roofs. What we'll see is people starting to see avenues where they can reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, but with no disadvantage to themselves.
3 years ago, the government made much of the need to legislate its 2030 target and did so. This year, not so much. The Climate Change Minister indicating he will only take the 2035 target to Parliament if the Greens vote for it as is. The Greens say they're willing to negotiate, even though they want something more ambitious. Either way, the government is confident it's done enough to keep business happy while also pushing hard to cut emissions.
The level of ambition that we have put forward today will see us as one of the most ambitious countries in the world in taking action on climate change.
Chris Bowen is the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Chris Bowen, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks for asking me on, Sarah.
Now, the Climate Change Authority began its work considering a target for 2030 by asking people to consider a range between 65 and 75. You said today that anything over 70 was unachievable. Can you define unachievable?
Well, the Climate Change Authority entered into a lot of consultation with experts and across industry and scientists and recommended to us that we go for the maximum possible level of achievement. And we accepted that advice. And they also recommended that the maximum possible level of achievement was 62 to 70% emissions reduction. And that is very ambitious for our country. Let's be clear.
Sure.
I've seen commentary out there saying it's not ambitious enough, but let's be clear about what we've accepted today. It is a halving of emissions from today. It's a per capita reduction of emissions of up to 81% from 2005. It's the equivalent of taking the transport emissions out of Australia twice over the next 10 years. So this is, as I've often said, it needed to be ambitious and achievable. The Climate Change Authority, which consists of a very well-respected board, chaired by Matt Keane, also the chief scientist, other people with strong scientific and industry background, recommended this to us as the maximum possible level of ambition, which we have accepted and said we are up for.
I accept all those things about the seriousness of the Climate Change Authority. Did you ask them about a target over 70 and why it couldn't be achieved?
Well, that's very clear in their report. They looked at this very closely, Sarah, as you know. It's a very comprehensive report which runs through the science, the economics and what's achievable.
Can you boil it down?
Yeah, and they say in their report, in their advice to me, some people say more than 70 and they say, we do not believe this is achievable without unacceptable economic, social and environmental short-term costs. Now, if you want, some people might argue that there should be greater environmental, social and economic costs. That's not a view I share. This is a target which I think stands up to international scrutiny. It is at the ambitious end of international targets. We're proud of that. That's a good thing. It is a target which is in the economic best interests of the country. The CSIRO modelling shows that, the Treasury modelling shows that, and it's an ambitious target.
So will you legislate it? When you legislated the 2030 target, you said it was absolutely essential for business certainty. Isn't that the same this time?
Well, I said it was ideal and preferable at the time because a new government had come in and it was important
There's no question that you were signalling that it was important for business certainty, whatever the words were you used.
And it would still be ideal.
So will you do that?
Well, Sarah, if I could just answer the question, please. What we will do is our target is there. It does not need to be legislated. It is not a requirement. We will notify the UNFCCC of the new target. It will have force under the Paris Accord. If the Parliament shows a willingness to legislate it, the Greens, the Liberals have already said they won't, of course, because they don't believe in climate change. But the Greens, if the Greens indicate a willingness to vote for it, then we'll take it to the Parliament. If they're not, then we won't.
That figure that Jacob just used there of 90% renewables, are you going to bring in a new renewable energy target to hit 90%?
No, what we're doing, we're continuing with our work to 82% renewables by 2030, which is going well. There are challenges, but also we are making good progress. 1,000 Australians a day are putting in a home battery, for example. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will mark the 60,000th battery installed. And then we've commissioned a post-2030 market review, the Nelson Review, which has already provided an interim report, which has been very warmly and widely received across the sector as the right answer for that 2030 to 2035 period. We're waiting for a final report, but it's pretty clear the direction of travel. And my state and territory ministers and I have agreed that that is a very good direction to follow.
So one of the criticisms that I've heard today about what you released today is the absence of details on those parts of the economy that will have to do the very heavy lifting. For example, will you be demanding more from those heavy emitting industries, those industries captured by what's called the safeguard mechanism?
Sarah, with respect, I don't think that's a fair criticism. We put out, hundreds and hundreds of pages of detail today, a new net zero plan, and importantly, 6 sector
There's no specific details on what you're going to look for from the safeguard mechanism, which is an essential part of this heavy lift, isn't it?
There's an industry sector plan written by the Industry Minister and I, which is quite detailed with due respect. It goes through the decarbonisation pathways for industry, which is what investors asked us for. They said to us as the government, it's important for us to know what you think the decarbonisation pathway is. So that we can invest in the right places. And we listen to that consultatively. And those 6 sector plans are very detailed and serious documents with new initiatives for the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, the National Reconstruction Fund, electric vehicle charging, and importantly, energy performance and energy efficiency. But to your question, our safeguards reforms, which we legislated early in our term, are working well. They've already delivered in their first year on-site emissions reduction at the facilities, the big industrial facilities, equal to a third of Australia's aviation emissions. That's good progress.
And are you going to be expecting them to do more?
There's a review next year.
But ahead of that?
No, there's a review next year. It only started operating really in the last 12 months. Give it a chance to work. We're seeing good results so far. Inevitably, after a couple of years of operation, there'll be things which, after a proper review, we think, well, that could be working better. We will do that as part of our normal, methodical, careful process.
And what about transport? Obviously, our vehicle emissions are still going up.
It's been a challenge because you can institute a reform now with the average length of service of an Australian car being, well into a second decade. So i.e. you buy a car today, it's operating for, 15 or more years. And so it takes time to turn that around. Our new vehicle efficiency standards are working in terms of much more choice for people. A lot of EVs models coming into Australia already and more coming in the next 12 months. Very exciting. You'll be able to get an EV, Sarah, which is cheap, which is expensive, which is yours, a big or a small, whatever you like. That range is increasing dramatically. Also, our electric vehicle tax cut has been really driving high take-up. But of course, I'm not here to pretend to you that that has all of a sudden impacted on emissions yet. It's going to take quite a while for it to have the full impact on our emissions.
Let me talk about prices. Obviously, Jacob there just reviewed the question that obviously dogged you in the first term for a long time when we were going to see prices reduced. Now, in the Treasury papers that were released today, along with the rest of the material you're talking about, it says that under what's called the disorderly transition, that is not doing what you have committed to today, there would be an increase in wholesale electricity prices to the tune of 70% on average by 2030. So can you guarantee now that electricity prices will go down as more renewable energy sources come on?
I can guarantee that renewables are the cheapest form of energy.
That's not the question.
No, but I'm giving you a serious answer, Sarah, with respect, and I'm pointing to the work that's out there from the Australian Energy Market Commission, which showed energy prices coming down 13% if we stick to the plan of more renewables. And the Treasury modelling that you pointed to, showing energy prices will be lower with more renewable energy and higher if we sweat those coal assets for longer, as the Liberal Party is calling for example. So that is what we need to do. The biggest impact that we're facing, both on reliability and cost, is coal-fired power, which is breaking down a lot. We've got big coal-fired power stations out at the moment, for example. That drives up prices. We need to replace that. These coal-fired power stations, they've served Australia well, but they're getting very old.
Help people understand it. How long will that crossover point take before those renewable resources start to drive down prices?
Well, for many Australians, they already are. If you've got solar panels and a battery, as 1,000 Australians a day are doing, you find your energy prices falling dramatically. And that helps also those who haven't done that, because when we get more batteries into the system, that reduces peak demand, which reduces prices for everyone. All of us, whether we have a battery or not, prices come down. But that that doesn't happen overnight, Sarah.
So how long will it take?
Well, again, we'll have another default market offer out in the next few months. You'll start to see the impacts. But look, we've never pretended in the face of international energy pressures that all this happens easily or quickly. But we also don't walk away from the fact that renewables are the cheapest form of energy ever known to humankind.
Will this policy rise and fall, succeed or fail on electricity prices?
Well, if you mean in terms of public support, I think that is very important, because Australians, I think, do want to see climate action, despite the climate denial of some in politics. The vast majority of Australians do want to see climate action, but they also care about cost of living, because it's right before them every day. We have to, as a government, deal with both. And that's exactly what we are doing. And again, the good news is, whilst we do face headwinds and challenges, of course, the fundamental fact is that what's good for your pocket is good for the planet, and vice versa. Renewables are the cheapest form of energy and the lowest emissions. That is a good thing. It's not a conflict. It means keeping on going with this plan is the right answer for those Australians who very rightly are concerned about cost of living, and also those Australians who are very rightly concerned about climate change.
Chris Bowen, thank you very much indeed for joining us, particularly on this day. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Sarah.
Thank you very much.